You're watching Viewpoint. I'm Afrida Rahman Ali. About 3,000 people have been injured in Lebanon and about 12 dead. Hundreds of pagers carried by Hezbollah members in Lebanon blew up nearly simultaneously on Tuesday in an unprecedented series of cyber attacks. The Iran-backed militant group, in fact, has said, that is the Hezbollah, of course, has said that these wireless devices began to explode around 3:30 p.m. local time. That's Lebanon time, about 6 p.m. India time. And it was a targeted Israeli attack, according to Hezbollah. So, according to Hezbollah operators, Israel was behind this attack. It was a joint operation between Israel's intelligence service, the Mossad, and the Israeli military. The Lebanese government also, of course, condemns the attack as criminal Israeli aggression. Israel's military, which has engaged in tit-for-tat strikes with Hezbollah since the start of the war with Iran-backed Palestinian militant group Hamas in Gaza last year, has so far declined to comment publicly on the explosions. So there is no comment coming from Israeli military. The pagers that exploded were new and had been purchased by Hezbollah in recent months. According to a Lebanese security source, these were pagers that were actually deployed from a Taiwanese manufacturer. And the particular manufacturer from Taiwan also said that the pagers which bore the company's mark had been made by a European distributor. Experts now say that the explosions, unprecedented in their scale and nature, underscore Hezbollah's vulnerability as its communication network was compromised to deadly effect. In fact, we tried to understand this a bit more with the help of experts. And in fact, I have now joining me on the program is Brigadier Hemant, who will tell us more about the sort of coordinated attacks that has happened. I asked him a little while earlier about what he thinks of the scale and the magnitude of this attack and the timing of its execution. This is what he had to say.
The device called pager. Like missiles are more guided, they are more accurate, while rockets have explosive warhead, but they are not guided as well. So they have a large number of weapons with them. Now, if you look at the past history, we have been seeing that Hezbollah has been engaging Israel at a regular intervals. They've been firing basically rockets and missiles, at times even artillery shelling also. But Israel's anti-aircraft defense system is so good that they have been able to stop most of the attacks. But the fact remains that Hezbollah is a very well organized militia. In fact, it is called a militia rather than a terrorist group or just a group. Okay. Now, what Israel seems to have done in this particular thing is a device called pager. Like we have a device called WhatsApp on our mobile, we have WhatsApp through which we send data messages. Now, why Israel? Why is Lebanon using pagers? Simply because the moment you talk on a mobile, it is easy to intercept as to what you are saying. While data can be protected more easily because it goes in the encrypted form, and in ensure that theirs is a standalone system. That's why they had ordered pagers, as per the news report, from a Taiwanese company. Possibly what has happened is the shipment was stopped in between, and in this pager, which is like more like a carrier, they have inserted a bug, they have inserted some explosive, and then at a pre-designated time, they have ensured that a signal was sent, a signal from outside. This heated the battery of the pager, which is basically of lithium. The battery became warm. The moment battery becomes slightly heated up, then the explosive gets activated, and and the pager exploded. Of course, the amount of explosive inside the pager was hardly anything, maybe even less than 1 gram or 2 grams. Exact quantity one doesn't know, but they were high explosives. So therefore, there are two more important issues. Firstly, how was the explosive put inside the pager? Number one. Number two, how many such pagers were there with Israel? Number three, how it was activated. And number four, as to what is the cause of damage which is there. So the answers which are available right now is that possibly physically, the explosives were put inside the pager by hijacking the shipment in between. Number two, how was it activated? This was activated by sending a signal from outside. Whether the signal was sent with the help of a drone, whether it was sent by a physical aircraft flying over it, or whether it was sent by using electromagnetic waves, that is not clear, but there are many options available by which you can send a strong signal. And number four is how many such devices were there? There were 3 to 4,000 devices as per the figures coming out. Almost about 18 people have died and hundreds have exploded. So this pager was like an IED, improvised explosive device, which was with the people of Hezbollah. They thought it was a secure means of communication. That's why they were using it, and they were proved wrong, and they were used like an improvised explosive devices by which a large number of operators of Hezbollah have been targeted, which will reduce their efficiency considerably. Will it stop Hezbollah from carrying out further attacks? The answer is no, because Hezbollah, this is what people who have been hurt is in the region of 3-4,000, while as I mentioned to you earlier, the strength of Hezbollah is in the region of 50 to 60,000. So very roughly about 10% or 15% of the Hezbollah fighters have been affected. So that much definitely the efficiency is reduced, but it is not completely disabled Hezbollah. That has to be very clear to you. However, their means of communication has been targeted, and therefore it will take a long time for them to re-establish the communication. So at least in the short duration, the effectiveness of Hezbollah has definitely gone down, and it's a kind of a covert operation which has never been done earlier, and it shows you as to what technology can do. If you are audacious, if you want to take risk, what all can you do? And what you have noticed here is in this war, Israelis not used direct firing weapons like missiles and drones, etc. They have used an indirect method in which they used their technological power to ensure that the pagers were exploded. Because the moment you use direct firing weapons, then the collateral damage is quite a lot. And for every one terrorist killed, there are a large number of innocents who get killed. But in this particular case, the damage to the collateral damage, that is the damage to the innocent people, is minimal, and more number of operatives of Hezbollah seem to have been targeted. So, in nutshell, their efficiency has been affected 10% definitely, and they will become less effective for at least over some time. Now, the next question that comes to the mind is, how did Israel calibrate this attack? Did they depend heavily on data rather than the conventional weapons? That means, how did they target this attack? Now, the point at issue is, it is very, very clear that Israel has realized the limitations of direct firing weapons like missiles and all. And also, what you have to understand is the direct firing weapons are very costly. Like, for example, if you fire a missile costing 1,000 crore rupees, you have fired it once, that's all. It is gone. It will hit a target, but thereafter it cannot be reused. Meaning, in today's long drawn war, Israel is having with Hamas and Hezbollah and Houthis, you cannot use very costly weapons because it's a big drain on your economy. So what you require is a low cost, low technology kind of weapons which are not very costly. For example, what must be the cost of this operation which Israel has done? Pagers in any case had been bought by Lebanon, so Israel didn't pay for it. All that they have done is put in about say, 3-4 kgs of high explosive, which cost whose cost is peanuts, meaning it is very very less. Not even, I don't know exact cost, but it can't be more than 5-10 crores, And also the other thing that they have used is basically an electromagnetic pulse or a electromagnetic wave, which is what has activated the whole thing. That is, I mean, we all know remote can be used. We all use remotes for our TV and for our many other devices. How much does it cost? All that it costs is the battery power. So this is a very cheap device which Israel is used in ensuring that the Hezbollah has been their power has been reduced, because in a long drawn war like the Israel war, or for that matter the Ukraine war, it is not high end technology or costly technology which is important. It is an affordable technology which comes cheap that is important. And in this, Israel is used a very cheap technology consisting of high explosives, consisting of an electromagnetic pulse, and consisting of some deadly planning or some audacious planning which they did, and because they done it long time back, and therefore obviously things definitely have created a problem for them. Okay, definitely Hezbollah has been nullified at least for some time. Now the next question that comes to your
Right.
mind is,
Uh,
what about the diplomatic efforts
we
which
have to also understand here that a number of questions which Brigadier Hemant Mahajan was also trying to explain to us, a number of questions arise about the entire execution of this operation. Remember, 12 reportedly dead. The figures could be more. This happened last evening, India time, 6 p.m., Lebanon time, around 3:30 p.m. in simultaneous attacks where pagers were detonated. This is supposedly an unprecedented way of targeting the Hezbollah rebels. This sort of an attack has not happened before. And what is even more interesting is that this policy to abandon mobile phones and to adopt pagers were taken recently by the Hezbollah chief, who thought that mobile networks are easily detectable, they can be intercepted, whereas pagers, being an obsolete device, would not be as easy to detect. But it just so happened that their adversaries got the better of them, were a step ahead in that sense, and the pagers were detonated. Hezbollah operatives were using these pagers for their communication network. So clearly that entire communication network has been intercepted, and that network has clearly broken down at the moment. Allegedly, Israeli military is behind this, and Israeli intelligence has managed to crack this network. I am now joined by Dr. Pavan Duggal, who is a security expert and a cybersecurity expert and also a lawyer. Good evening, Dr. Duggal. Thank you for joining us on Viewpoint. The first basic question is, how would it be possible to detonate pagers? Pagers, first of all, please tell our viewers, what is a pager? A lot of young viewers would not even know how it works.
Well, pager is an ancient device. When I say ancient in terms of technology, it's about more than 25 years old technology, where you just have a small device which is used for the purposes of receiving a message in the form of a text. Now, these are the days prior to mobiles, and pagers were seen as very efficient ways of communicating through text messages. Now, pagers have by and large vanished from the landscape, thanks primarily to the advent of mobile technology. But the fact remains is that even in some sectors today, it is continuing to be used, like in medical emergencies. But it's also being used in Europe, Africa, and the Americas. Now, when in this particular case, the concerned stakeholders wanted to rely upon pagers, they were wanting to rely upon outdated technology. Why? Because they had a legitimate fears that the mobile network is going to be compromised in terms of them being intercepted. And that's why they wanted to go a layer below. Little did
Yeah.
they realize that when they're going to go below that layer, there will be challenges.
And that is what backfired, isn't it? It's like almost like, their strategy did not work because this network, and perhaps this is a strategy that must have been at work for some time. I want to know from you, how would it be possible to detonate a pager? Would there be a microchip that would be monitored? Would it be like, some, interception that would have happened at the manufacturing stage, that the device would be tampered and, it becomes a ticking bomb and it just needs a press of a button? How would it be detonated?
Well, there are various permutations, combinations of how a pager can be detonated. What exactly happened in this case, we don't know. But some permutations could be theory one, there was some ammunition powder that was put In some pagers, they were shipped, so there was a breach in supply chain, and person two, there too, they were all triggered together to go ahead and come across with a synchronous simultaneous blast across 5,000 pages. That looks a very attractive theory, but has a lot of loopholes, primarily because how do you ensure that you're going to put 3 grams of ammunition powder only in 5,000 pages? How will you ensure those 5,000 pages will only be in Lebanon and nowhere else? How will you go ahead and track that? So there are some intrinsic shortcomings of that theory. A more realistic approach is that this would have been a classical case of a cybersecurity breach, where the cybersecurity of the pager network would have stood compromised. And unknown state or non-state actors would have breached the cybersecurity of the pager network, would have got inside, and thereafter would have triggered off commands which would then go ahead and ensure a simultaneous blast. So these pagers are not conwired devices. They are all independent devices, and they get ultimately connected to the pager network. So if you are inside the network unauthorizedly, you have virtual complete control on how the
There must have
network
been
can
some
be.
explosive. How would it cause fatalities, even if it blasts or even if it explodes as a device? How can the magnitude of it be such that it can cause deaths, unless there are, unless it has some explosivity embedded in it?
Well, there are today programs that are available which allow you to go ahead and trigger the self-destruction of a device. Now, once the self-destruction of a device takes place, depends on how it's going to take place, it's going to cause some kind of a damage. In this case, we already have 11, 12 people dead and thousands injured. Now, most of the injuries have taken place around the waist, has taken place in the chest where the pocket was there, and
Yes.
some of them have also incurred eye injuries. So it's hard to right now predict what exactly happened. But I think that this is a manifestation of a new kind of a cyber warfare, a new kind of cyber crime. And I see impact of or traces of use of artificial intelligence in this particular attack. Why? Because the way you're able to synchronize the attack over 5,000 pages only in one geographical location, and that too simultaneously by a single stroke, you're causing far more damages or injury than 2 days of warfare is going to cause. So that being the
Right.
case, I expect that even some bit of AI would have been used by cyber criminals when they would have triggered and planned this kind of an activity.
You made an interesting point that if the entire pager network is compromised, then how would they identify only those who Hezbollah operatives were using explodes and the others do? But isn't it also true that no one is using pagers these days? I mean, it's an outdated device, it's an obsolete device. So by that logic, do you think there is a possibility, and many people are asking this question, that could there have been a case where the perpetrators would have colluded with the manufacturers? So at that level itself, there has been a sort of a conspiracy.
Well, to say that nobody is using pagers is a factually inaccurate statement. Pagers are extensively still being used in medical emergencies. Further, pagers are being used in Europe, in Africa, and in America. It's only that we are in India and that we are so much used to the mobile ecosystem that we think the entire world will also go to look at mobiles the way we look at it. For example, the way the Americans use mobiles is completely different from the way Indians use it. So having said that, there is some limited use, but despite the limited use, it would have been very, very difficult to find out which user would be a Hezbollah fighter or a mercenary or whatever. So that being the case, there could be theories of conspiracy. But then please understand, the manufacturer in Taiwan has said, sorry, we've got nothing to do with this because we didn't manufacture that. Only our name was given to a company in Europe. So we have to yet find out. And it's highly unlikely that somebody is going to stand up and say, hey guys, I made the said detonatory kind of devices so that they could be detonated. Sorry, nobody will say that. So in a scenario like this, we'll have to wait for further investigations to help us understand what exactly has happened. But one thing is very clear. This is now the new form of warfare. Also, if they can do this to pagers, the next step is them doing the same thing or replicating the same thing in the mobile ecosystem. to mobiles.
Come to
So
that.
mobiles are going to become.
I wanted to address that question with you in a little bit of detail. But since you mentioned, let's look at these images that we have, of first of the explanation that has come from Gold Apollo Company Limited. This is a statement which says Apollo Gold Corporation has established a long-term private label authorization and regional agency cooperation with BAC. And according to the agreement, we authorize BAC to use our brand trademark for the product sales in specific regions, but the design and manufacturing of the products are entirely handled by BAC. So this is a letter from Gold Apollo Company. Initially, reports came out that they were manufacturing the pagers, and so they would, be answerable on how these devices detonated. And therefore, this letter says, regarding the recent media reports about AR924 pager, we clarify that this model is produced and sold by BAC. We only provide brand trademark authorization. I have no involvement in the design or manufacturing of this product. We always adhere to relevant regulations and maintain transparent and compliant cooperation with our partners. So again, obviously news reports that have come, and all of these explanations are now fast emerging. But your understanding of this statement that I just read out.
This is a logical statement that any company or manufacturer will say. Look, nobody's going to wake up and say, hey guys, I was the one who did the illegal activity. We don't expect that to happen because we're not living in the times of Harishchandra. Having said that, you have to also realize that we are only getting piecemeal information with each passing day and passing hour. It's now about close to 24 hours since this has happened, and we're only getting to have the various pieces that we have to configure together to solve the jigsaw puzzle. So it will be hard to come up with any concrete findings. But one thing is very clear. This kind of an episode is actually going to be a wake-up call, not just for Lebanon, but for all nation states across the world. Why? Because they were testing a model. That model was, please understand, prior to COVID-19, cyber criminals have been misusing the internet. But then they were only doing criminal activity via the internet. The focus on the device as a ammunition or as a weaponization exercise was largely missing. Now, for the first time, we find that apart from using internet for purposes of disseminating criminal activities, you're actually going ahead and seeing a new trend where cyber criminals are weaponizing the devices as distinct potent weapons, which are designed to cause injury and fatality to the target victims. So having said that, I'm only expecting that these kinds of trends are going to go on a far more frequent basis. And very quickly, the model that they successfully were able to test on the pager ecosystem is soon going to be tested on the mobile ecosystem as well. So let's realize post-COVID-19, the world has already entered into a new era. I call it the new cyber world order. And if there are three essential elements of this new cyber world order, there are increasing cyber crimes being a part of our daily lives, increasing cybersecurity breaches being the new normal, and states getting very powerful. Now, these cybersecurity breaches are a manifestation also of the new cyber world order. Therefore, I think every stakeholder has to come out of his deep slumber and take note of this important event, not just because of its strategic element, but also of the long-term ramifications of these kinds of activities that are likely to come in the coming times.
Right. We were talking to Brigadier Hemant Mahajan just a short while ago, and what he mentioned is similar to actually what you said. In fact, echoing precisely what you said about these devices becoming the new weapons now, and because they are affordable, it doesn't cost you that much money, and then it is technology which is doing this. So you've made two important points today about cyber warfare becoming the new game. And now Middle East is volatile. This is a very, very hot, it's like a hotbed of geopolitics and the sort of conflict that we are seeing now, taking a new dimension with this. So that's a big point that you're making. But now let's also come to the issue of mobile networks, because that affects us all. And we are concerned whether mobile devices can be equally vulnerable, Mr. Tucker.
I think mobile devices are completely vulnerable, if not equally. The reason for this is very clear. A mobile is a communication device. A mobile is perceived to be more secure because it's in my pocket, because it's with you in your purse. But just because there's the proximity of the physical body to the device does not make it more secure. On the contrary, hacking a mobile is a child's play. So therefore, we have been seeing breaches of mobiles happening left, right, and center. In the Indian context only, we have seen the great manifestation of the Indian Jugaad school of management in the context of mobile ecosystem. They are going ahead and using all kinds of jugaad for breaching the cybersecurity of the mobile ecosystem, making people victims of their various mobile frauds and cyber frauds. Therefore, in a scenario like this, if you are perceiving that I've bought a very expensive phone and that's 100% secure, I think it's a completely false and wrong perception that needs to be done away with totally. There's not a single phone that has yet been invented or that's yet been manufactured that's totally hacking proof, because there's no computer which has been made which is totally hacking proof. It's only a question of the level of difficulty that you are actually going to put up to make sure that the hacking becomes more and more difficult. A lot of people say, look, I get an iPhone, I'm in Apple, and I'm the most secure. Sorry. Yes, you are correct. The number of infections that emerge on a yearly basis in Android is, say, about 4 or 5 lakhs and growing. But in that comparison, the number of infections in the Apple ecosystem are lower. But that does not mean that Apple ecosystem is the most secure. It's securer than Android, but then it's not completely secure. But then again, we have to realize that we are living in an imperfect world where the concept of cyber security being an absolute paradigm does not exist. So we have to constantly keep on upping our antennas, constantly keep on bridging the gaps or loopholes that exist in our cybersecurity and work towards making our digital present and digital future more secure and more resilient.
Right. I want you also to be with us while we listen into some important reactions, Mr. Dugal, that has come from world over, whether it's the Pentagon spokesperson or US State Department spokesperson. I'm quickly playing that out and come to you for closing comments.
I don't have any details to provide on the reports of the pager blast. I can tell you, to my knowledge, there's no U.S. involvement in this at all. Again, it's something that we're monitoring. And in terms of potential escalation, I go back to what I said earlier in terms of a key focus for this department and the U.S. government writ large is on working with partners in the region, to include Israel, to prevent the conflict between Israel and Hamas from spiraling into a wider conflict. And that includes the tensions along the Israel-Lebanon border. And so we'll continue to strongly advocate for a ceasefire and the release of the hostages. And we'll continue to strongly advocate for a diplomatic resolution to the tensions that we're seeing along the Israel-Lebanon border.
Thank you.
Information on this incident. I can tell you that the U.S. was not involved in it. The U.S. was not aware of this incident in advance, and at this point we're gathering information.
And what information have you gathered so far?
We'll continue to collect information. I don't have any public readout to give now, but we're collecting information in the same way that journalists are across the world to gather the facts about what might have happened.
Obviously, it doesn't take much guesswork who the most likely culprit would be in terms of doing this, in terms of who the enemy of Hezbollah is. Do you have any indications that to doubt that it would be Israel that was behind the...
I don't have any assessment to offer one way or other at this point.
And I know you're saying that, but in terms of what this means, I mean, there's been for a number of weeks the talk of dialing down, or at least not having a retaliation from Iran over, sort of a tit for tat, if you will. How does this play into it? Is there any message that you're sending to Israel in terms of what to do next, or for that matter to Iran, to Hezbollah, in terms of how to respond to this?
So I never want to either comment or speculate about the impact of any one incident, especially in the early stages of an incident, and I'm not going to do so here. That's been our consistent policy to try and avoid doing. I will say that our overall policy remains consistent, which is we do want to see a diplomatic resolution to the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. We want to see one that allows the tens of thousands of Israelis who've been displaced from their homes and the tens of thousands of Lebanese who have been displaced from their homes to be able to return home, and that's what we are continuing to pursue.
I'll let others take it.
So it's very clear that the discussion has not started at the moment, at least around the cyber warfare issue, and something that you're pointing out for us. Do you think it's time that the world now starts that discourse and creates those guardrails, for the larger community who's impacted by all this?
The world is still by and large waking up to the ramifications of this pager attack. Most of them are only saying we are gathering information. But let's take it as a given, yes, that this has happened. While investigations will throw more light, the fact is, what light does it throw in the direction of the future? And one light is very clear, that we are now going to be braced up for new kinds of cyber warfare, where devices which are extensively being used across the world are likely to be used as weapons of destruction, maybe even weapons of mass destruction. So imagine, rather than unleashing a bomb or an aerial attack, you have seen in the Ukraine war how drones have made tanks redundant. Now is the next level where the cyber criminals are going to use the mobile devices, and there are more mobile devices on the planet than there are the number of humans on this planet. So if you can actually go ahead and weaponize those for the purposes of causing not just terror, but even scare, fear, anxiety in the minds of your target community, your enemy, or your nation state, then clearly that's the way your power is going to evolve in the coming times. Therefore, I think globally, stakeholders, nation states need to wake up to this emerging new challenge that's come up and try to come up with legal guardrails to ensure that this kind of a replication of the Lebanon model of the current attack does not get replicated in the mobile ecosystem. Unfortunately, we don't have much internationally in that particular direction. The Budapest Convention or of the Council of Europe is not really helping us much. There's lack of any adequate international treaty on cybersecurity, and on AI, work has not even begun. So in this kind of a stuff, let this kind of a pager attack be a starting point of a new journey of discovery, of trying to find out new mechanisms of cyber resilience to ensure that we make our mobile networks more resilient, but more significantly, also ensure that cyber criminals do not go ahead and target the devices, the mobiles and the communication devices as weapons of destruction in the coming times.
Right. Dr. Pawan Dugal, thank you so much for joining us today and for giving us your perspective on this highly sensitive matter and giving us all the important information which I hope my viewers would have benefited from. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
So very clearly, two important things, in fact, which we just heard from Dr. Pawan Dugal is about the fact that cyber warfare is a reality now, and it is a wake-up call, is what he calls it, for the world at large. And this sort of communication networks getting intercepted in this manner, this sort of communication devices being detonated in this scale is unprecedented, and therefore there's lots that the world has to take note of from this particular incident. I want to go back a bit to the exact sequence of events, what has happened. 3,000 people injured, 12 dead is what we are getting to know. The casualties could further rise. Hundreds of pagers carried by Hezbollah members in Lebanon blew up simultaneously. This happened on Tuesday evening, local time around 3:30 p.m., which would be around 6 p.m. in India. And this, according to Hezbollah, is the doing of Israeli military. They're calling it a targeted Israeli attack on Hezbollah operators. And according to their statement, this Israel is behind the attack, and it's a joint operation between Israel's intelligence service, the Mossad, and the Israeli military. The Lebanese government, of course, has condemned this as a criminal Israeli aggression. Israel's military, which has so far engaged in a lot of tit-for-tat strikes with Hezbollah since the start of the war with Hamas in Gaza last year, so far has not commented publicly on the explosion, nor has they claimed responsibility for it. The pagers that exploded were new. They had been purchased by Hezbollah in recent months. This has been revealed by a Lebanese security source. And also information coming in that a Taiwanese manufacturer said that the pagers, which bore the company's mark, had been made by a European distributor. We read out that particular statement a short while ago. Experts now say that the explosions are unprecedented in their scale and nature, and they underscore Hezbollah's vulnerability as its communication network clearly was compromised. Some would say it has been cracked into and it has collapsed at the moment because they were heavily reliant on this pager network. Several areas of the country in Lebanon were impacted, particularly Beirut's southern suburbs, which is a populous area. And the footage of this incident, of course, showed shoppers and pedestrians randomly collapsing in the street, caught off guard by the sudden detonation. And Hezbollah, of course, as I mentioned, has been using pagers to communicate, and this is an obsolete device. Many of us in the 90s may have used such a device where you can just receive a text message there, and there is no a two-way communication that can happen. You can just receive a message. It was one of those devices. So Hezbollah has long touted secrecy as a cornerstone of its military strategy, and they shunned high-tech devices and they resorted to the pagers, thinking that it will be a more secure way of communication. Now, unlike the other non-state actors in the Middle East, Hezbollah units are believed to communicate through internal communication network. This is considered to be one of their key building blocks of their powerful group that has long been, of course, accused of operating as a state within a state in Lebanon. So that is insofar as how the Hezbollah has been operating. We can, in fact, also show some of those pictures that we've accessed of the incident that took place. You can see CCTV footage captured of a man's bag that exploded, and these are disturbing visuals. So just a warning there. You will see this is one of the location of the explosion that happened on Tuesday evening. Thousands of Hezbollah members were injured by exploding pagers. That's precisely that moment where the explosion took place. And several of these incidents took place in many different locations. And that also, in a way, if you collate that information, would actually give you an idea of where the Hezbollah operatives were located. Fighters and medicos were among the wounded as well. We are given to understand even Iran's ambassador to Lebanon has been injured. Pagers, as I mentioned, has been the preferred way of communication by the Hezbollah. Excuse me. And these are the visuals that are now doing the rounds. As I said, in marketplaces, they've exploded. The video also carried a date and a time stamp confirming the incident's exact timing, and that's how we know that this was around 3:30 p.m. local time in Lebanon. That is around 6 p.m. India time last evening. And the videos, of course, quickly became viral in social media. A lot of these pictures are now doing the rounds of how people were caught completely off guard. 13 dead, around 3,000 people injured. Hospitals in Lebanon, we are told, are overwhelmed. Images coming from Beirut's southern suburbs, which show injured individuals being wheeled into emergency departments. There were wounds in hands and pockets. Now, remember, pager is a device that is strapped on the waist normally. So, obviously, a lot of injuries in that area, and injuries in the face, we are told, have been found. And the incident, of course, comes at a time where there's a heightened tension between Lebanon and Israel. Hezbollah claims that Israel is behind this. Israeli military and Israeli intelligence has been able to intercept their communication network. A lot of conspiracy theories also doing the rounds. We heard from Dr. Pavan Duggal, who said it is possible that these devices were tampered with, were hacked, and they were turned into explosive devices. And that is something that technology can now do. Also mentioning that there is a possibility that artificial intelligence was used. So the use of communication devices in this sort of a warfare is something new, and that adds a new dimension to the Middle East conflict as well. We heard from experts who say that this should be a wake-up call for the world at large to understand that this is a cyber warfare that is now taking center stage, and it is not ending here anytime soon. There'll be other countries who will be drawing sort of inputs from this, and probably militia who will be also making these sort of attacks, making these sort of attempts as copycat attacks. So CCTV footage that has been captured of the incident is what is playing out for you at the moment. You see a man's bag exploding, so that is probably where the pager was kept at that moment. Earlier, we spoke to Brigadier Hemant Mahajan, and he had a few important things to say about how this could have been executed and why this is important, why this is significant. Let's take a listen.
Very, very well by the Iranians. If you look at their strength comes with it seems that the Hezbollah group of Lebanon has been targeted by Israel all of a sudden, and that too at more than 2,500 to 3,000 places simultaneously. So how do we look at this situation? What you have to understand is today Israel-Hamas war has been going on for a long time, and one of the important militias or a terrorist group which is there is Hezbollah. Now Hezbollah is based in Lebanon, though they have presence elsewhere also, but major base is Lebanon, and they are funded very well by the Iranians. If you look at their strength comes between 50,000 to 60,000 armed militant. That is what we are talking about. And the kind of weapons that they have rifles, light machine guns, but the bigger weapons that they have rockets, they have missiles also. Now the difference between rockets and missiles is missiles are more guided, they are more accurate, while rockets have explosive warhead, but they are not guided as well. So they have a large number of weapons with them. Now, if you look at the past history, we have been seeing that Hezbollah has been engaging Israel at a regular intervals. They've been firing basically rockets and missiles, at times even artillery shelling also. But Israel's anti-aircraft defense system is so good that they have been able to stop most of the attacks. But the fact remains that Hezbollah is a very well-organized militia. In fact, it is called a militia rather than a terrorist group or just a group. Okay. Now, what Israel seems to have done in this particular thing is a device called pager. Like we have a device called WhatsApp on our mobile, we have WhatsApp through which we send data messages. Now, why Israel? Why is Lebanon using pagers? Simply because the moment you talk on a mobile, it is easy to intercept as to what you are saying. While data can be protected more easily because it goes in the encrypted form, and in ensure that theirs is a standalone system. That's why they had ordered pagers, as per the news report, from a Taiwanese company. Possibly what has happened is the shipment was stopped in between, and in this pager, which is like more like a carrier, they have inserted a bug, they have inserted some explosive, and then at a pre-designated time, they have ensured that a signal was sent, a signal from outside. This heated the battery of the pager, which is basically of lithium. The battery became warm. The moment battery becomes slightly heated up, then the explosive gets activated, and the pager exploded. Of course, the amount of explosive inside the pager was hardly anything, maybe even less than 1 gram or 2 grams. Exact quantity one doesn't know, but they were high explosives. So therefore, there are two more important issues. Firstly, how was the explosive put inside the pager? Number one. Number two, how many such pagers were there with Israel? Number three, how it was activated? And number four, as to what is the cause of damage which is there. So the answers which are available right now is that possibly physically the explosives were put inside the pager by hijacking the shipment in between. Number two, how was it activated? This was activated by sending a signal from outside. Whether the signal was sent with the help of a drone, whether it was sent by a physical aircraft flying over it, or whether it was sent by using electromagnetic waves, that is not clear, but there are many options available by which you can send a strong signal. And number 4 is how many such devices were there? There were 3 to 4,000 devices as per the figures coming out. Almost about 18 people have died and hundreds have exploded. So this pager was like an IED, improvised explosive device, which was with the people of Hezbollah. They thought it was a secure means of communication. That's why they were using it, and they were proved wrong, and they were used like an improvised explosive devices by which a large number of operators of Hezbollah have been targeted, which will reduce their efficiency considerably. Will it stop Hezbollah from carrying out further attacks? The answer is no, because Hezbollah, this is what people who have been hurt is in the region of 3,000-4,000, while as I mentioned to you earlier, the strength of Hezbollah is in the region of 50,000 to 60,000. So very roughly about 10% or 15% of the Hezbollah fighters have been affected. So that much definitely the efficiency is reduced, but it is not completely disabled Hezbollah. That has to be very clear to you. However, their means of communication has been targeted, and therefore it will take a long time for them to re-establish the communication. So at least in the short duration, the effectiveness of Hezbollah has definitely gone down, and it's a kind of a covert operation which has never been done earlier, and it shows you as to what technology can do. If you are audacious, if you want to take risk, what all can you do? And what you have noticed here is, in this war, Israel is not used direct firing weapons like missiles and drones, etc. They have used an indirect method in which they use their technological power to ensure that the pagers were exploded. Because the moment you use direct firing weapons, then the collateral damage is quite a lot. And for every one terrorist killed, there are a large number of innocents who get killed. But in this particular case, the damage to the collateral damage, that is the damage to the innocent people, is minimal, and more number of operatives of Hezbollah seem to have been targeted. So in nutshell, their efficiency has been affected 10% definitely, and they will become less effective for at least over some time. Now, the next question that comes to the mind is, how did Israel calibrate this attack? Did they depend heavily on data rather than the conventional weapons? That means, how did they target this attack? Now, the point at issue is, it is very, very clear that Israel has realized the limitations of direct firing weapons like missiles and all. And also what you have to understand is, the direct firing weapons are very costly. Like, for example, if you fire a missile costing 1,000 crore rupees, you have fired it once, that's all. It is gone. It will hit a target, but thereafter it cannot be reused. Meaning, in today's long-drawn war, Israel is having with Hamas and Hezbollah and Houthis, you cannot use very costly weapons because it's a big drain on your economy. So what you require is a low-cost, low-technology kind of weapons which are not very costly. For example, what must be the cost of this operation which Israel has done? Pagers, in any case, had been bought by Lebanon, so Israel didn't pay for it. All that they have done is put in about 3-4 kgs of high explosive, which cost whose cost is peanuts, meaning it is very, very less. Not even, I don't know exact cost, but it can't be more than 5-10 crores, And also the other thing that they have used is basically an electromagnetic pulse or a electromagnetic wave, which is what has activated the whole thing. That is, I mean, we all know remote can be used. We all use remotes for our TV and for our many other devices. How much does it cost? All that it costs is the battery power. So this is a very cheap device which Israel is used in ensuring that the Hezbollah has been, their power has been reduced. Because in a long-drawn war, like the Israel war, or for that matter, the Ukraine war, it is not high-end technology or costly technology which is important. It is an affordable technology which comes cheap that is important. And in this, Israel is used a very cheap technology consisting of high explosives, consisting of an electromagnetic pulse, and consisting of some deadly planning or some audacious planning which they did, and because they done it long time back, and therefore obviously things are definitely have created a problem for them. Okay, definitely Hezbollah has been nullified at least for some time. Now, the next question that comes to your mind is, what about the diplomatic efforts which USA has been using to have restraint both on Hezbollah as well as others? Well, diplomacy in case of Israel and Hamas and Israel and Hezbollah just does not seem to be working. The foreign minister or the foreign secretary of USA has been to Israel so many times, but Israel is simply ignored his calls for having restraint, ignored their calls for not increasing the level of violence. And not only that, not only Israel, even the other groups like Hamas and Hezbollah have simply ignored the call of United Nations and everybody else to come down to the negotiations tables and talk to each other, because still Hezbollah thinks, still Hamas thinks, still Houthi thinks, and their biggest supporter Iran thinks that they can inflict much more damage on Israel, and they are quite clear that because of damage inflicted on Israel and the fact that today, even now, there are 200-300 Israeli hostages which are in the custody of Hamas, so therefore they can force Israel to come on the negotiations table. Unfortunately for them, Netanyahu, who is the Prime Minister of Israel, is a very tough nut to crack, and it's a very clear message. When a political leadership is very strong, when the military leadership is very strong, psychological warfare does not work, casualties do not work, because Netanyahu is very clear in his mind that he is not going to come on the negotiations table but after being pushed by Iran and various groups like Hezbollah or Hamas or the others. They will come on the negotiations table at their own terms of references, meaning they want the people to come back, but they are not going to stop just because few missiles are fired, few Israeli casualties take place, Israeli economy is going down, the world is putting pressure on Israel, and nobody in the world now seems to be supporting Israel. Israel is running short of ammunition, etc. But still, they will use innovative methods to keep on fighting with Hezbollah. So presently, it appears that both the sides, that is Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Houthis on one side, and Israel on one side, both of them seem to have hardened their stand, and there doesn't seem to be any common ground as far as meeting is concerned. So this is a very sad state. The world must put pressure on both the sides to ensure that the level of violence goes down, the violence stops, the negotiations must go on, because using weapons, using war will not solve any problems. And just by killing more people on either side is also not going to be a solution. Ultimately, a solution.
those were the images that were running through the day of the attack, the pager attack across Lebanon that has killed 12 people and over 3,000 people are injured. The hospitals in Lebanon, we are told, are overwhelmed at the moment. At the moment, we're trying to, of course, understand the exact sequence of events. We're trying to get expert analysis on the use of the technology to detonate pagers. We leave it at that for now. Thanks for watching.